Hello, welcome to AS Level Law. So what we're going to look at today is an introduction to law and the nature of law. So this will form part of paper 1, but also these principles are important throughout your course. Okay, first of all, just as an introduction, what is a rule? Well, a rule is something that tells us how to behave. We are expected to follow rules. Now, rules can be split into two parts. They can be legal or they can be moral. And society creates these rules. The government can make laws, and then you have moral rules that we are expected in certain cultures to follow. The two do overlap, so rules and laws are linked. So laws are a set of rules that have to be followed. If they're not followed, then there are formal sanctions. So in other words, formal punishments can be taken. Whereas a norm of behaviour develops over time, so it's linked to societies, it's linked to cultures, it can be linked to religions. And there are informal sanctions if you break a norm of society. So you may be shunned by people or told off by teachers or grounded by your parents. Morals are a code of conduct. They are principles that are derived from a code of conduct. Informal punishments, so as I said, parents, schools, things like that. And morals do evolve and they do change over time. Things that once weren't immoral, we now might see as immoral. Things like sexism and not that it was ever okay, but society changes and is less tolerant of things now. Another concept to be aware of is justice. So what is meant by justice? Well, justice is just refer to it as fairness. It's based on a value judgment. It's based on an opinion. So I might say, I think the starting tariff for rape at 5 years is unjust. I think it's unfair, but you might disagree with me. You might say, no, it's fair. 5 years is a good starting tariff. So justice is fairness. Now, the law does not always achieve justice. There are lots of examples of miscarriages of justice. So where people have been wrongly convicted. In rape cases, only 1.5% of reported rapes are actually prosecuted. So that means for every 100 people who report a rape to the police, only 1.5 men are prosecuted. You could also say that the lack of legal aid is unjust. So people can't afford to bring a court case. The right to a jury trial ensures that justice is done, unless the jury looks something up online, which they're not allowed to do, which is illegal to do, then justice wouldn't be done. So justice is something you look at more in your second year for paper 3, but that is just an overview of rules, laws, and justice. So we know that some things are illegal and immoral. For example, killing someone. That is illegal. It's murder, it's manslaughter in most situations. And you can say that it's also immoral to kill, but you could argue maybe it's not immoral to kill if you are killing in self-defense to protect yourself and you kill somebody. So there is an overlap between law and morals. Some things are immoral, but they're not illegal. So you could say that adultery, having an affair, that is immoral, but it's not actually illegal. So just be aware that law and morality, they do overlap. And again, this is something you do in paper 3. There are plenty of case examples that you will be looking at. There's a case called Gibson. And in this case, an artist makes some earrings for an art exhibition. Now, the artist uses fetuses, dead fetuses, for these earrings, as in like that is what, instead of these pearls, it would be a dead fetus. You could argue that that is immoral because it's quite revolting. It is revolting. But the artist would say, well, freedom of expression, I should be allowed to display these earrings. So the artist was actually, in the case of Gibson, charged with outraging public decency, and they were found guilty. So the moral and legal element overlapped there. Other examples, you've got a woman who gave birth to conjoined twins, and the twins needed an operation to be separated, otherwise they would both die. And the doctors went to court to say, please, can we perform this operation? We need to separate both these twins. If we don't, they'll both die. If we do separate them, the weaker twin will die. So some people would say, whatever the situation, it is actually immoral to kill. That is the case of Re-A, so R-E and then capital A. So it's just a good example of law and morals overlapping. They were allowed to perform the operation, so they did actually separate the twins. A little bit more on Law and Justice, just to give you a case example, the case of Berryman. So Mr. Berryman was a railway worker who was killed by a train whilst oiling the tracks of the train. Now, Mrs. Berryman claimed compensation from the company because there'd been no lookout whilst her husband was doing his work. So the law said that there should be a lookout man, and it was a man, whenever workers were relaying or repairing the tracks. So those are the crucial words, if you are relaying or repairing the tracks. But Mrs. Berryman's claim was denied because he was just maintaining the tracks. So the court were very literal in their approach, and they said, well, no, was he maintaining the track? No, he wasn't. The law says, was he relaying or repairing the track? No, he was just maintaining it. So the law is very clear in that situation, and they used the literal approach. He wasn't relaying or repairing the track, so she got no compensation. So you could argue that there was no justice done there. Another good case example is the Hillsborough tragedy. It's one to look up. 96 people died. The police let in football fans. Big failure of the security services and the police, and they surged forward, and 96 fans were crushed. So something to look up. So Hillsborough, definitely worth looking up. The next thing, just as an introduction to law, lots of different types of law. So you have criminal law, tort, which is like negligence, contract law, European law, some of it still applies, family law, employment law, consumer law, medical law, like medical negligence, and human rights is a big area of law. And for OCR with me, you will be studying human rights in your second year. So another thing that you need to be aware of are the court hierarchies. So the criminal courts, at the bottom, magistrates court, they deal with so many cases, about 97% of all criminal cases. Then you have the Crown Court, and that's where you have a jury. So that's something we will also look at. Above the Crown Court, you have the Court of Appeal, Criminal Division. And then at the very top, you have the Supreme Court. So most criminal cases will be in the Magistrates Court. If it's a serious offence, it will be in the Supreme Court. Now, in civil law, magistrates are sometimes used, but most cases will start off in the County Court. Then you have the High Court, and the High Court you have 3 divisions: Queen's Bench Division, Family Division, and the Chancery Division. And each one hears different types of cases, and that's something we will look at later on. Above that, you have the Court of Appeal Civil Division, and then you have the Supreme Court. So the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court are in London. Now, we've mentioned there the difference between the hierarchy of civil and criminal courts. There is a difference between civil and criminal cases. So, civil cases, the purpose of the law is to uphold the rights of individuals, whereas in criminal cases, it's to punish people and to protect society. In a civil case, the person starting the case is the individual. They are called the claimant. In a criminal case, it's the state. So you will see R versus. R stands for Regina, which is Queen. Okay, and then when we have a king, it will be Rex, I think. I don't know my Latin monarch names. So yeah, in criminal cases, it's the state, it's the CPS, it's the Crown Prosecution Service, and we refer to them in court as the prosecution. The courts hearing the cases in civil, mainly it's the county and the High Court, and then in criminal, it's the magistrates and the Crown. The standard of proof in civil cases, this is on the balance of probabilities. So you have to be 51% certain that you agree with the claimant, and then they have won the case. But in criminal cases, the old phrase was beyond a reasonable doubt. Now juries are told that they have to be sure. So they have to be sure of somebody's guilt. So I would say that's about 95% certain that somebody is guilty. In a civil case, the judge decides on the balance of probabilities, and then in a criminal case, the jury decides guilty or not guilty, or the magistrates if it's in the magistrates' court. There are 3 magistrates, 12 jurors. Powers of the court, well, they can award damages in civil cases, and in criminal cases they can give you a community sentence, so you can do unpaid work. They can fine you, or they can send you to prison. That's called a custodial sentence, and they could give you a driving ban. So quite a few differences between civil and criminal cases. So watch the next video where we're just going to talk about the development of the law and a little bit about the rule of law.